Go Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi. Hari Om Tat Sat. Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 2. We're verse 11 up to verse number 19. The passage started all the way in the beginning of the chapter. So the Vishnu Dutas are describing about the glories of the holy name, basically, having first chastised the Yamadutas for their transgression of trying to punish a sinless person. They began explaining why, in fact, Ajamil is sinless by describing the glories of the holy name. That's what we've been hearing. So the passage continues that thread of discussion, the glories of the holy name. And we left off in verse number 11. In verse 11 and 12, they speak of more excellences of the holy name of the Lord. Na nishkritar uditar brahmavadibis tata vishudyat gavam vratadibi yata hare namapadar udharitais tadutamasloka guno palambakam. So by following the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies or undergoing atonement, sinful men do not become as purified as by chanting once the holy name of Lord Hari. So na nishkrita uditar brahmavadibis tatavi shudyat yagavam vratadibi. So the agavan, the persons who are full of sins, they do vratadibi. They do various vratas, and adibi means etc. So charity, tapasya, etc. These various things that can be performed for relieving oneself of sinful reactions. And nishkritar uditar brahmavadibis, they also follow the process of atonement as prescribed by the Brahmavadibi, learned scholars such as Manu. And Prabhupada's purport, he mentions that there are 20 Dharma Shastras, Manung Sanghita, Parashara Sanghita. So Dharma Shastras are literatures given by powerful sages and rishis and scholars during a particular period to guide humanity how to perform Dharma in that particular period. Like now we're in the age of Kali, it would be very helpful if we had some sages give us a Dharma Shastra, because the environment is so much different from the environment that we're hearing about in Srimad Bhagavatam, for example. So how do you navigate this particular environment that you're in now in a way that's in accordance with Dharma? So various scholars and rishis and sages, they would provide what is called Dharma Shastras, giving guidance for people in that particular time period, that particular circumstance, taking into consideration the environment. It would be super helpful to have one of those, but we don't. In any case, luckily we have the holy name. Yay. But previously they had these Dharma Shastras. So in the Dharma Shastras, there'll be so much recommendation for austerities. So a sinful person, he's doing the vratas and he's following these prescriptions given in these various Dharma Shastras. Here, the Vishnudutas say, na vishudyati, means one is not purified, or tata, not so much. Okay, so yes, there is some purification that comes from doing the vratas or following the prescriptions in the Dharma Shastras, but one is not so much purified. Not tata, or navishuddhiti tata, not so much purified. Yata, as much as you could be purified by Hare Nama Padharu Dharitais, chanting even a portion of the name of Hari, Hari Nama Pada. And the word Pada means a word. Hari Nama Padaya. And Sri Vishwanath's commentary, he just says it could just mean chanting the name that indicates someone else, like your son, which is the case of Ajamil. Or it could be like an inflection of the name, not really indicating Hari at all. An inflection of the name, just like in Hare Krishna circles, we say Haribo for everything. Hey, Haribo means I have a question, slow down, I have a question for you. Or sometimes you want to act shy, Haribo. This is called an inflection. When you give some, you kind of modify a word with the inflection of your tone. So the word is inflected in some way, or you express like astonishment, like haribo, haribo. So this is not indicating hari exactly. You're using it in relationship to something empirical or conventional in the conversation. But the name of hari is chanted. So even that type of chanting is superior to the vratas and to the recommendations of the Dharma Shastras. That's what he wants to say here, Vishnu Dutas. You get more purity. So, Navishuddhita, you're not so much purified as you are by chanting the name like this, even. Why is that? Tar Uttama Shloka Guna Upalambakam. Because by that chanting, tat means that, by that type of chanting, Uttama Shloka, the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in poetry, Guna Upalanka, his qualities can be realized. Guna Upalambakam means that one can realize the qualities of God. So that is something definitely the Retas and the Dharma Shastras cannot help you to realize. At best, they can help you remove or liquidate. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. When your vocabulary is just not coming to you and you feel dull-headed. Anyway, they can liquidate is not the word I'm looking for another word. In any case, one can be free from the reactions of sins at best, but one cannot realize God by performance of vratas and following Dharma Shastras. So this is the extra quality of the holy name of the Lord. Uttama Shloka Guno Palambakam. One can realize God. Or if the question is asked, and this is put in Sri Vishwanath's commentary hypothetically, if the question is asked, probably with a little undertone of like envy, that, hey, Haribo, this fellow is casually chanting a name, not even indicating the Lord, not even for atonement. And you're saying that's superior than this fellow over here who's like religiously applying Dharma Shastras to, better his existence or at least free himself from reaction. And how can you say that? And he wants to say here, Sri Vishwanath said, well, that is the guna of the Lord. Uttama Shloka Guna Upalambakam. That is his guna, his power. Because the name of the Lord is not different from God himself. So God is all powerful. And this name is an indication of God's own quality, his own guna. So the vratas and so on, they do not have this quality of being God. But the name is itself God, Abhinatvam Namanamino. That is his own quality. That's how powerful the name is. So no need to feel envious. This is just the nature of being God. So this is explanation given here. Okay, next verse. So continuing the glories, they here give another critique. This is the same critique, why the name is more powerful than these Dharma Shastras and atonements and all that. So they say here, Naikantikam tadi kritepi nishkrite. So even if one performs atonement very nicely, krite api, nishkrite, although performing nishkrite means atonement, still not akantikam. There isn't one's heart isn't absolutely cleansed. Naikantikam tadhi. One's heart is not absolutely cleansed. Why? Manapunar dhavati chat asatpate. Because the mind again runs after the path of asat. That is his criticism here. As we mentioned, so many times we've heard in the course of our study of this passage that sins or the effects of sins may be liquidated, but the underpinning causes of them are not at all touched. The underpinning cause of sinful acts and their effects is bija, the material desires, and of course, underpinning that is avidya. So that's not at all affected by performance of all these atonements. Therefore, manapunai dhavati charasapate. The mind again runs to the path of asat. So path of asat here means sinful activities specifically. Of course, asat means asat. So any activity in the material world, pious or sinful, is asatpate. And very quickly, piety turns into sin. Also, that's the weird thing about the material world. When piety is taken to the extreme, it turns into sin. Often, the material world is actually a very strange place. How things work here. And for example, if you look at like medieval religious traditions, especially the ghetto Middle Eastern ones, sorry to say, but you see a lot of times when they go like puritanical mode, then they're prepared to like kill innocent people in order to maintain quote purity of the thing. So very quickly the piety gets how you say, it's contaminated. It's all of it is a sapate. It just keeps moving around, swinging from one, extreme to the next. So manapunar dhavati chara sapate. Again, the mind is running after the path of a sat. So the Yamadutas may find little faults here, because in the conversation that we heard in that study in the big commentary, we heard that the Vishnudutas did not criticize the devotees who also seem to munar punar davati charasatpate after chanting holy name. They chant holy name, and again, their mind is running after a satpate. Isn't it? We are also some kind of devotee, and we also have this experience. Soon as I finish my japa, mana punar davati charasatpate. Soon as the japa is over, soon as the class gets over, 1 hour gets over, mana punar dhavati charasatpate. But the devotees are not criticized like this. And the explanation given in the commentary we heard was that this is just like the biting of a toothless snake. So there's just some impressions are there, so they are doing, but actually having no impact. So Yamadutas say, so why are you criticizing atonement? This can also be said for atonement then. Right? That why are you criticizing that again they run after a sat after doing the atonement? No, that is just like the impressions, but it is not having any effect. We can also give explanation like that. So Sri Vishnu, that's the Purva Paksha and the voice of the Yamadutas. So Sri Vishnunaga's commentary, that explanation was not my imagination. The glories of the holy name are actually described as such in Shastra. Whereas in Shastra, atonement is never described in such a way that it removes that which underpins sinful acts in the form of material desires and avidya. Atonement is never described like that in Shastra. So you cannot say like that. That will be an imagination. Even in Karma Shastras where they do hyperbole, we heard there's in Karma Shastras, we discussed this, there are a lot of arthavadis there in order to convince conditioned souls to do the pious activity. But even in the sections where there's arthavad, never is the atonement described in this way. So you cannot just give explanation like that. This is not the Middle Eastern traditions where you can give any purport you want because there is no parampara system and there is no history of commentarial history. There's so many commentaries and there's so much Shastra there. So why you speculate? You cannot just speculate some imagined understanding. So that explanation I gave of holy name was not my imagination. That is actually glory of holy name that is coming in Shastra. So that is how that particular thing is answered. Just in case someone feeling the pinch that why are you criticizing? Hey, the mind runs after a sat, but there, look at that. I'm saying crossing the street, going to what does they call it? AMC, the movie theater. Look, he right there. I just saw him in the japa room. Now he's going to the movie theater. How can you not criticize that fellow elephant bath? We say, no, that is like the biting of a toothless snake. Hare Krishna. So tat karma nirharam abhipsatam hare. Tat karma nirharam abhipsatam. For those who have desire to karma nirhara means the complete destruction of karma. So that means papa, bija, and avidya. For those who desire that, then hare gunanubhada kulu satta bhavana. Then there's no other better way than the hare gunanubhada, the continuous glorification, discussion, chanting of the quality of God. Hare gunanubhada. The word anuvada means continuous glorification of God. The word anu, meaning to follow, also taken in Sri Vishwanath's commentary to me, you glorify God anu, following after the things that you hear from sadhus. So you glorify after hearing first, but first Shravanam, then Kirtanam, right? You first do Shravanam from Guru, then you do Kirtan. So that is the meaning of Anuvada here. Also, if you continuously do that, then there will be Sattva Bhavana. Sattva Bhavana means the complete purification of one's beingness, Sattva beingness, when you actually become purified in this way. So this is the glory of God. This is the glory of God's holy name specifically. Prabhupada quotes this nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam earlier. We hear that just by hearing Harikatha, which is itself pious activities, hearing and chanting of the glories of God, then Krishna himself, Hridyantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. For that truthful devotee, Krishna himself is also participating in the purification of that devotee. So that is not said for the rites in the Dharma Shastras or Karma Shastra. They don't, God himself taking personal interest in those who chant his holy name, who turn towards him in any way. Then he is taking personal interest in them. He is helping the process. That is why this process is deeply sattva bhavana, deeply purifying, because God himself is involved in that whole process of purification. So this is the glory of the holy name. Therefore, therefore, at the time of death, the Ajamil helplessly and therefore, Enam, him, this Ajamil, ma apanyata, do not try to take him, do not arrest him. Krita asheshagha nishkritam, do not try to arrest him because he has performed atonement, nishkritam, for asheshagha. Aga means sin. Ashesha, unlimited sins. Krita nishkritam, he's performed atonement for unlimited sins. At the first chanting of the name of his son, at birth, oh Narayana. At that time, asheshaga nishkritam. Krita sheshaga nishkritam. At that time, he performed unlimited sin. And what is the proof positive of this? Yadaso Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrihit. He perfectly chanted the name of God at the time of death. He chanted that Bhagavan Nama Samagrihit. Perfectly here means without the aparad. He didn't do aparad. Mriyamana at the time of death. So here, in short, it's taken in the commentary that this is the proof positive of all sins being liquidated, because a sinful person cannot chant holy name. That's basically the commentary that comes. So one is full of sin only, then they will not chant holy name. It's not possible for them. Just like it's coming to mind, in the Gajendra Moksha Lila. So Gajendra is, fighting with the crocodile for a long time. Finally, he realizes he's about to be crushed because he's in an unfavorable environment for him. He's in the water. So the crocodile is being invigorated and spirited by the water, but Gajendra is losing power. So at that time, he chants out to the Lord. So Prabhupada says this is not possible for a sinful person. When a sinful person is suffering, he starts wilding out even more, as we see plenty of evidence in the contemporary times. When sinful people suffer, they really get crazy. Whereas a person who is, you can say, pious, of course, there's a special piety, but you can say pious, then they may turn to God. So here, this being taken as proof positive that he chanted name perfectly at the time of death. So at the time of death, if you have aparad, then you would not be able to chant holy name. But if you don't have aparad, then at the time of death, you can chant holy name. So this is a proof positive that there's no sin in him. Otherwise, how would he be able to chant at the time of death? This is how it's taken in the commentary. Yadaso Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samakrihi. So you cannot arrest him. Two verses are quoted by all of our acharyas here. from Gita. Yesham tantakata papam jananam punya karmana. So when one's sins have come to an end, for those whose sins have come to an end, antakatam papam, and punya karmana, and they have performed the pious activity. Again, this is a special type of piety. Shrimvata swakata Krishna, punya, shravana kirtan, that sort of pious activity. Yata yatatma pramegyate so mat punya gata shavana bidana. That type of pious activity. Hearing, chanting the stories of God. Te dvanda moha nirmukta, being freed from the delusion of duality. Bhajante mam, doing my bhajan, dhridavrata, with determination. So this verse is taken to show that the antagatam papam, there's a destruction of the sin by piety, of course, special piety of bhakti yoga. And because they're free from the delusion of duality, they do Krishna's bhajan with determination. So this verse is being quoted as an example, saying that he was without sin, because he did bhajante mam, he did Krishna's bhajan at the time of death in the form of chanting the holy name of the Lord. So how you can do bhajan at the time of death if you have sin? This is the basic idea here. Okay, so what type of chanting destroys the sin? So 4 types mentioned here. Here, the previous verse says samagrihit. The word used was samagrihit. He perfectly chanted the name of the Lord, and that destroyed unlimited sins. But even not perfectly chanting the name of the Lord destroys sin. So there is that perfectly chanting at the time of death, but even lesser forms of chanting is powerful to destroy the sin. Sanketyam parihasyam va stobam hilinam eva va vaikunta namagrahanam ishishagaharam vidu. So 4 types of lower level chanting mentioned here. So sanketyam, put here as an assignation, means to indicate someone else, like a son, for example. This is the sort of chanting that Ajamil also did. Parihasyam means making a joke, but making a joke with affection. Sri Vishnu points this out. This is making a joke with affection. So someone's name is a name of God, and you can crack some joke on them, but the joke is done affectionately. So this is namabasoso. Stobam, which Prabhupada translates here as musical entertainment. Sri Vishnu's comment says, see, previously people were like way smarter than us and more sophisticated. So they were like writing songs in Sanskrit. And when you're writing song in Sanskrit, especially poetry, sometimes you need a word to complete the meter, because you're writing in these different meters are there. Vikridita, Shardula Vikridita, and all these different meters are there, Anushtup. And sometimes when you're writing in a meter, sometimes the meter is running a little short. So you need a word to fit the meter so that the poetry is complete. So then they add the holy name just to complete the meter. This is called the stobam namabas, musical entertainment. And helanam, the word helanam here means neglectfully or inattentively. Just Sri Vishwanath gives the example, just as Krishna lifted the Govardhan mountain, like Helaya, he lifted it like neglectfully, just like a child is picking up a mushroom and not really a thing for them. So sometimes the name is chanted Helanam. Helanam means like when eating, when sleeping, or about to sleep. When you're falling back in your bed, finally after a long hard day, you go, Hare Krishna. Not really chanting like deeply, you're just neglectfully chanting. Or you're about to chow down on some prasadam, you're like, Hare Krishna, right before you eat. So this is called Helana chanting. So this is not with the hate also. This is not with criticism. So Sri Vishwanath wants to point out here, specifically with Parihasam and Helanamba, that it is not with the criticism. So he quotes this nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is at the end of the Shishupal, after he loses his head for criticizing the Lord. So at that time, Shukadeva Goswami giving us some advice here. Nindam Bhagavata Shrimvam Staparasa Janashava Toto Na Paiti Yasupi Yatyada Sukritach Chuta. Anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotee will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credit. So yeah, Nindam, even hearing it, Nindam Bhagavata Shrimbam, hearing the Ninda of Bhagavan or his devotee, Taparasya. One should immediately leave that place, otherwise finished. So here, these all these different types of namabhas are not with derision, like in the case, and this is contrasted with Vena, where he makes some statement about Vishnu. So that chanting of the name was full of fault because it was with hatred. So that isn't counted as namabhas. If you do chanting like this 4 times, Vaikunta Namagrahanam, you take the name of the Lord like this, Asheshagaharam Vidu. Then there's destruction of, again, unlimited sins, including Bija and Avidya. Okay, there's a 5th type of chanting also, next verse. 5th type of chanting is in situations that are beyond your control, which happens in life. So here's some examples here. If one chants the holy name of Hari and then dies because of an accidental misfortune, such as falling from the top of a house, slipping and suffering broken bones while traveling on the road, being bitten by a serpent, being afflicted with pain and high fever, or being injured by a weapon, one is immediately absolved from having to enter hellish life, even though he is sinful. So this is a 5th type of chanting. Somehow you chant in a situation where the conditions are completely beyond your control. So such is the power of the holy name. Okay, so question is coming. So why all this instruction in Shastra for performing atonement proportionate to the severity of the sin committed? So Vishnudutas make a quick comment about that. So according authorities who are learned scholars, Maharshibihi, there's lots of sages who are learned scholars, have carefully ascertained that one should atone for the heaviest sins by undergoing a heavy process of atonement. And one should atone for lighter sins by undergoing lighter atonement. Guru nam cha laghu nam cha, guru ni cha laghu ni cha. So if your sins are heavy, you do heavy atonement. If your sins are light, you do lighter atonement. So they say like that because these atonements have limited power. So due to limited power, you have to give, increase the dose or decrease the dose according to the severity of the sin performed. So they told like that because they knew the limited power of these atonements. But prayashchitani papanam, so you do this as prayashchita atonement for the sins. So that's why the sages prescribe like this. This last sentence is added. It's because this last sentence of Prabhupada's translation is the implied point. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, however, vanquishes all the effects of sinful activities, regardless of heavy or light. So that's the implied point. This is not actually stated in the verse itself, but it's implied. That's the point they're making. Yes, the sages have prescribed, heavy or light proportion to the heaviness or lightness of the sin. So they have told like that. But the holy name has unlimited power. So therefore, just chanting the name can destroy all sins, whether heavy or light. Next verse, they make the point clear. Although one may neutralize the reactions of sinful life through austerity, charity, vows, and other such methods, Taishtanyagani puyante tapodana vratadibi. So by austerity, charity, vratas, etc., you may get purified from these sinful reactions. Na adharmajan tadridayan. The subtle cause of the sin is not removed. So this has already been told so many times. Na adharmajan, that which gives birth to the adharma. So that means, again, the bija, the material desires. Tat hidayam, that is still in the heart. So that's the problem. Tat Apishangri sevaya. But if you do ishangri sevaya, service to the lotus feet of the Lord, then all of that is removed. The bija and the avidya also. However, if one serves the lotus feet of the personality Godhead, he is immediately free from all such contaminations. Okay, there are final points here. As fire burns dry grass to ashes, so the holy name of the Lord, whether chanted knowingly or unknowingly, burns to ashes without fail all the reactions of one's sinful activities. So here they want to show that being and knowledge of what you're doing is not a requirement for it to have its effect. And one effect is being mentioned here, the destruction of Papa, Bija, and Avidya. Examples given of fire burning dry grass. Whether a child does it or an adult does it doesn't make a difference. That fire will burn the dry grass. So rather in knowledge or in ignorance, if one chants the holy name has its own power. So it will give its effect no matter who's doing it. Another example is given because it wants to show a positive effect also. Not that, of course, the previous verse was a positive effect also, but it wants to show a spiritual effect. Just the destruction of Papa Bija Vidya is one side, but the other side is that it gives prema or gives Krishna consciousness. So this is another analogy is given. This is the last verse in the passage. If a person unaware of the effect of potency of a certain medicine takes a medicine, or is forced to take it, it will act even without his knowledge because its potency does not depend on the patient's understanding. Yatagadam viryatamam apayuktam yadhichaya ajanato api atma gunam. So just like medicine that is viryatamam, very powerful, if you take it, yadrichaya, somehow or other, for whatever reasons, you're just taking some medicine, Ajanatopi, even though you're an ignorant person, Atma Gunam, it has its own power to give the cure. It cures you, nourishes you, make you better. So the holy name is like that. Korya mantra, api udharita. So the holy name also is like this. It has its Atma Guna, it has its own power. So not only will it destroy the disease, but it will give health. It will give prema. Similarly, even though one does not know the value of chanting the holy name of the Lord, if one chants knowingly or unknowingly, the chanting will be very effective. So much these points we also heard in that long commentary we studied together. Very nice. So this power of the holy name. So now next passage, the Yamadutas have to leave disappointed that they cannot arrest Ajamil. And we'll hear that they go to Yamarash to complain. And those complaints we'll hear about in the 3rd chapter. Very nice. And then Ajamil, after this, will express regret for his sinful life. He's returned to his body. He goes off to pilgrimage to perfect his devotional service. And then he goes back home, back to Godhead. That's the rest of the story. Very nice. So we'll stop here and see if anyone's got anything. So Mukunda says, so if a devotee gets into drugs and his dependency on drugs is ever increasing, we are to understand that as the harmless bite of a snake with no fangs. Very hard to accept, Prabhuji. Yeah, or it could be the result of aparad also, right? If a devotee is, you use the word increasingly, he's dependent on drugs and it's ever increasing. So we studied I forget what we studied this, not too long ago though, maybe a month ago. We heard about the 5 effects of the naparad, right? One of them was bhakti shaitilya, which means slackening of bhakti. And another one was, what was it? Bhagavan? Oh God, I forget the technical Sanskrit phrase used by Jiva Goswami. But the other one was absorption, objects that erode devotion, right? That was one. There were 5, so these are 2 of the 5. Slackening of bhakti and absorption in objects that erode devotion. So one might suspect that there could be some aparad if the indulgence in drugs, that's your example, is ever increasing. Then you might, okay, there might be some aparad there going on. So But other devotees you may see showing somewhat of a steadiness in bhakti yoga, but they also doing sense gratification, right? So you see that maybe they seem at least to demonstrate a certain fixity and devotion, and well, every now and then got their hand in the cookie jar and taking a few cookies. So that time you might just, oh, that is like the imprints of the body. That's like the body of a toothless snake. And even in that case, it will be very hard to accept. So that's why these things are for us to examine ourselves and not so much to examine others. Because who can say what's going on with others? It's very bewildering. I'm thinking of also Narahari Sarkar's Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita. So he has a whole section with how to deal with the guru who falls down due to sense gratification. So, in ISKCON, for example, we've seen so much of that also. So very interesting. He says such a guru should not be rejected. Rather, the disciple should, in private, go and talk to the guru and be like, yo, what's up? What's going on? That's how he mentions that in that particular book is very interesting. He said the only time it's considered proper to give up a guru who's, indulged in sense gratification is that he has become averse to Vaishnavas and Vaishnavism. Then that time that guru should be rejected. Otherwise, one should not just immediately give up the guru because he's done sense gratification. So that might be an example of that sense gratification being like the biting of a toothless snake. I think Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's guru, who was that? Vipin Bihari. So I think he had a few habits that are considered questionable, at least for followers of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. I think he don't quote me on this. I could be misrepresenting, but I feel like I remember hearing Vipin Bihari smoking cigarettes and maybe a few other kind of weird things, which you probably wouldn't expect to see from a guru. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, of course, had his issues with Vipin Bihari, but Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur honored his guru. He even refers to his guru in Gitavali, one of his prayer books. Gitavali, he refers to his guru and his Siddha Swarup name, which was Tosi Manjri. Because as you all know, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he received Siddha Pranali Diksha. So in Siddha Pranali Diksha, they give you, your Ekadash Bhav, the 11 elements of your Siddha Swarup at the time of Diksha. So, and they even give a paper to you with the name of your gurus and the parampara with all their Siddha names. And so the Siddha name of Vipin Bihari was Tosi Manjri. And you'll see him praying to him, her, and his prayers in Gitavali. So his own relationship with his guru seemed solid enough. And if this part, we would have to double check, but I feel like I definitely heard this. He seemed to have some sort of, habits which may be considered bad, like smoking or something like that. So that might be an example of a toothless snake bite. Provided we're accepting the, exalted status of Vipin Bihari, who could be the guru of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Anyway, trying to conclude all these things by looking at others is very difficult because who knows what's going on, honestly. So Shastra is for our own self-examination. Okay. Agape puts from Bhagavad Gita 2:5 purport. According to scriptural codes, a teacher who engages in an abominable action and has lost his sense of discrimination is fit to be abandoned. This is for Dharma Shastra. Because in the context there in the Gita, Arjuna is saying that he should not reject his military guru or his grandfather Bhishma. So according to Dharma Shastras, there's a transgression and moral impropriety, you may be rejected. But now you're in Bhakti realm, things are very different in the Bhakti realm than the Dharma Shastric realm. So yeah, there he's talking about military guru, so a little bit different. It's amazing that with all these habits, if that's true, he was able to give the Ekadasha Bhav to his disciple. For giving this kind of information, one must be self-realized by themselves, right? So what was Vitrasura not self-realized, even though in a demonic form and attacking devatas? So this is the whole talking point of the Bhakti school, that Bhakti does not depend on the purity of the material apparatus, as in the case with karma, Gyan, and yoga, right? With Gyan and yoga, there needs to be purity of the antakarana. Otherwise there is no question of Gyan yoga or yoga, Gyan or yoga marg. No question. And of course, karma yoga also you need high level of sattva to perform it. So that means it requires material qualification. So the whole bhakti point is that bhakti itself gives a qualification. It does not require any material qualification in order to be manifest in the person. So many examples will be shown, like Vitrasura is one, prominent one. This is a major talking point of the bhakti schools. But somehow or other, and naturally so, honestly, we can't let go of the pious template that says that a person has to be demonstrating a certain level of material purity in order for them to have spiritual purity. At least it's very hard for us to be convinced that such a person has spiritual purity unless we can see the material purity. Because that the spiritual purity you can't see because it's spiritual, but you can see material purity. So people draw conclusions. You go to some, let's say, pure devotee's room, his space, and it's very messy. So you will say he's not pure. Why? Because they lack material purity. So without material purity, there cannot be spiritual purity. Most devotees actually think like that. If they give class, they will not say that. But in their own thinking and behavior with devotees, that's how they think. That without material purity, there cannot be spiritual purity. And that may be true, but it can also be false. And so there, of course, you say, well, in what case it is false? That is a very rare case. So yeah, maybe. But by setting your thinking pattern that way, you're sure to make that mistake in relationship to someone who may actually be pure, but not demonstrating material purity. Another case, Vamsi Bihari or Gorkishore Das Babaji. Actually, so many of these devotees, I seriously doubt any, at least ISKCON devotee, would be able to appreciate their purity just by looking at them. It'd be very difficult. What to speak of them, even the Goswamis, Nityananda Prabhu, who would be able to appreciate the purity of these persons if you had to look at them with your material eyes? So bhakti purity is not dependent on material purity. That's a very hard pill to swallow. It's one that we intellectually accept, but emotionally we can't wrap our heads around it. Emotionally, it's just like almost an impossibility to embrace that someone can be spiritually pure without material purity. And it's also dangerous. That's another reason why we don't emotionally embrace it, because we think about it on a communal level and its communal impact. So if someone doesn't demonstrate material purity, then that becomes a precedent, and then the whole community will be contaminated in that way, and that way fall down. So we don't embrace it. And that's probably right also, honestly, fair enough. But then it also impacts the way that we understand bhakti and the way we look at devotees. And that could be detrimental to our progress, at least according to Rupa Goswami's Drishtaya Swabhava Janita Vapushascha Dosha Napakrita Twamiha Bhakta Janasha Pashat. Don't look at the devotees from the material point of view. So this becomes a little bit of a challenge for us. But in any case, so yes, it is possible. You can have these habits like smoking cigarette and still give a Kaddish Bhav. Such a thing is possible. Although it's hard for us to appreciate how it could be possible. Okay, Agape has a question too, it looks like.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, my sincere obeisances. First question is kind of a small one. When you were talking about the Dharma Shastras and how we don't really have one for Kali Yuga. Srila
Yeah.
Prabhupada often quotes Manu Samhita, and I've heard other gurus
Dude, Manu
also.
Samhita is the ghetto. I promise you, you're not gonna be able to follow that. Manu Samhita is like, you know, all that crazy stuff we hear in like Islam and Christianity. Yeah, Manu Samhita is like that. Ghetto. It's really some of the stuff in there is just like so over the top. Like they'll have injunctions in there if a Brahmana drinks alcohol, then you should pour hot ghee down his throat until he dies. Like I'm telling you, it's like wild stuff in there like that. Where looking at it now, you're just like, this is why I don't like religion. Okay, sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to throw that in there. Manu Samhita is the ghetto. Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Amalam Ya Vaishnavanam Priyam. That's why Srimad Bhagavatam is called Amala Purana, because it doesn't have all this ghetto stuff in there. That's just like, whoa, what is that? It is just pure, no craziness, no crazy like that. Otherwise, we wasn't. Okay, sorry. Carry on.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. So, because I've heard other, speakers come from that point of view, like it's not relevant or there's interpolation or different stuff. So I was just, wanting to hear your thoughts.
Yeah,
If people
Prabhupada
ask
says in
us.
some places that we should follow Manu Samhita. I'm sure there's a sentence like that somewhere in Prabhupada's books. I know I've read it. One devotee just mentioned it to me the other day also. Because as a joke, we were joking about it. And yeah, I've never read the Manu Samhita in its entirety. There's one commentary in the Chaitanya Bhagavat where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is breaking down all the rules and Dharma Shastras for the different types of sin. So there's like pop, mahapap, ati pop. There's like all these different degrees of sin. And he's telling all the transgressions that fall under each of those categories. And I remember reading that commentary and I was like, yo, this is wild. Like some of the injunctions, I just remember there's one injunction, maybe Mukunda can help me, where like if a lady, I don't know if it's like if she does adultery or something, I think it was adultery, then she should be stripped naked and dragged through the city on a donkey and like put, to shame by the whole village or something like I'm like, whoa. No, sir. No, ma'am. That's out of control. So different, religious culture. I don't know.
That sounds like straight out the Bible, honestly.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like this is the stuff that you would expect to hear in the ghetto Middle Eastern traditions. So yeah, not really about that either.
Okay, cool. So second question, when we were talking about Ajamil's chanting at death, and it was described as being pure chanting. So was that above Namabas? Like, is that what was being said?
I'm not sure that the purity or samagra perfectly chanted means without the aparad.
Okay, so without aparad.
Yeah.
The only thing that like there's a couple non-aparads that maybe I could contest, but the biggest one, keeping material attachments even after hearing the glories of the holy name. Well, maybe he didn't hear the glories of the holy name, so it doesn't apply to him. I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but there's accepted. So, because that question already came up when we studied Sri Vishwanath's commentary, he continued to do sinful activity even after chanting. So, isn't that an opera? Like, isn't that the 10th offense of the holy name? And this is right, but yeah,
that's on a different aparad, and I'm only bringing this up because it was said that he chanted purely. Like I could accept Namabas, but once it was said that he chanted without offense, and then I like look back over the offenses, and it's like he obviously still had material attachment to his son because he's saying his name.
Oh, that is the bite of the toothless snake. That is what we heard.
But isn't that according to the sinning and grinning offense? Like isn't the 10th offense a different one?
The 10th offense is a different one than the sinning and grinning one. Yes.
So isn't that argument like?
Oh, so I get what you're saying. Okay. So you're saying that the 10th offense was that he maintained attachment and had no love for the holy name, even after hearing. Of course, he didn't really hear the glories of the holy name. So that might be the caveat there. So, but was that not the 10th offense? Yeah, it's not mentioned that that was the 10th offense. It actually, it said that his avidya was destroyed, right? So from his Namambash chanting, his avidya got destroyed. So if there is no avidya, then there cannot be any attachment, right? Attachment is based on avidya, right? Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesh, klesha. These are the 5 kleshas, right? Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, klesha. So if there's no avidya, there can be no raga also. So his avidya was destroyed. That's what we heard. So that raga that was being exhibited toward the sun, then that raga is also like the biting of a snake. That raga is also like a biting of a snake because there's no avidya. How can there be raga without avidya? So that is why his story is a little confusing. And that's why Sri Vishnu is giving this big commentary. So he said, actually, don't worry. Generally, the name is giving fruits after a long time, just as a fruit tree gives fruits after a long time. So don't worry, this should be the case for everyone. Don't worry. I like that comment, don't worry. But if there is no avidya, there cannot be any raga. So even that offense not possible.
Okay, I could go on, but I'll stop there. There's one more question I had about. Okay, it was talking about even if those are sinful, if they chant the holy name like right before dying, then they're saved from hell. So that got me thinking about like the stories of devotees who go to hospitals and will like chant to patients who are like on their deathbed. So is what they're doing like kind of helping those patients like potentially avoid hell? Is that what we can gather from that verse?
Wait, what's the example? Helping those patients go, like the devotee shows up
Well,
and
yeah,
chants
like
in his ear, or
like in hospice, yeah,
yeah,
it'll be a
why not?
non-devotee, like just random people, like I've heard of devotee nurses, even
Yes,
just
yes,
like,
why not? There's
okay,
so many stories, not only chanting, but devotees will also go and throw Ganga Jal, throw the Tulsi wood on the body. And so many glories of Tulsi. If you read, I think there's one book, Tulsi Amrita, by Bhakti Vishrama Madhava Maharaj. He's a great servant of Tulsi Maharani. So you read so many stories of Tulsi also. There's one person he was just about to die. And Yamadutas were just creeping. They were just waiting, like, yeah, we about to get this homie. And he met some sage from the path, and some sage gave him some Tulsi wood, and he was just holding it in his hand. And he died while holding the Tulsi wood. And then the Yamadutas couldn't approach him because the Tulsi wood was in his hand. There's so many stories like this. Not only just holy name, but so yeah, devotees doing like that has some benefit. You can gather.
okay, thank you so much, Prabhu. Appreciate your time.
All these things are very extraordinary. They're also achintya and avyakta. Achintya means inconceivable, and avyakta means beyond sensory perception, unmanifest to the eyes. So you have to take it or leave it. Shastra is telling you could take it or leave it. But if you leave it, you'll suffer aparat. So better to take it. Sham Gopi says here, Bhakti doesn't depend on the purity of the material apparatus. Great. Can't judge devotees based on what we can see externally. Material impurity doesn't determine spiritual purity. We read in Madhurya Kadambini, the factual and real indications of Nishtha are not the presence of good qualities, but the determination to practice bhakti, right? So again, it's very bewildering. So better that we hear these things and analyze ourselves. If you get into a culture of analyzing others, then you're bound to make a mistake. So better to hear these things and you just think about yourself. This is a good application of self-centeredness. and you'll develop natural faith in certain individuals. And sometimes that natural faith may be challenged because you're seeing certain activities of that individual. So that time you may have to like discuss with them or have some exchange, in private. Otherwise, looking at everyone else's, what's the point of that, honestly? Other than committing aparad? Why look at anyone else? You can look the persons you have natural faith in. Sometimes if you have long-term relationship with that person, you have natural faith, and they get into a sticky situation by providential arrangement, God is doing something or whatever. So that time you may discuss because you're getting a little bewildered. Otherwise, looking at anyone else is a big waste of time and a good way to commit aparad. Okay, Mother Gal, looks like you have something.
Yeah, if a person is a materialist, he hadn't done anything in Krishna consciousness at all, and he dies, but he has family members who are devotees, and they, do the whole 9 yards, put garland around them, tulsi in the mouth, ganga jal, the whole works. What can we expect to be the destination?
Something good. Who knows precisely, but something good. Lucky, that person, very lucky individual.
So at least probably, I don't know if it's too much to expect that he would be born into a family of devotees.
It's hard to say. Who knows? Only God knows the answer to that. But lucky is that family member, where the Vaishnava is taking birth. It is said in Shastra that the Pitris, the forefathers, they are in Pitri Loka. When they see a Vaishnava has taken birth in their line, they become extremely ecstatic. Yes, finally, about to be saved. So all we can say is lucky is that person who gives birth, or in his line, some devotee has appeared. It's very fortunate jiva. And we hear that in Prahlad Charita also, his story. So we can't say much more than that. What is his destination? All that, who can say? But something very wonderful, or wonderful enough.
Okay, just one last thing. Can you translate the ghetto for me a little bit?
Come on, Mother Gail, you know what is the ghetto.
Well,
I'm from Chicago, and you know what is the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago. The most dangerous place in America. Is practically like Afghanistan over there. And of course, I didn't grow up in the south side or west side of Chicago, but all my extended family is from that area, south side and west side of Chicago. So in my youth, I spent a lot of time, especially on the west side of Chicago and the south side of Chicago to some smaller degree. And whoo, it's like a war zone over there. It's crazy. Just to go to the corner store to get a candy, a lollipop, you'd be nervous. You like walk out, dun, 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 dun. There's like Mission Impossible sort of thing. You just somehow don't get shot. I remember playing as a young boy at the basketball courts in these areas because we would spend our summers with one of our uncles. He lived on the west side of Chicago, and he would take us to a basketball court sometime, and you would be scared to start winning because they may just get angry and shoot you on the spot or like beat you up. That's the ghetto. That's what I mean by the ghetto.
No, I know that, but I'm having trouble applying it to like the.
No, so anything that's like negative, not conducive, dark, demoralizing, etc. I'm using it in that versatile way. It's
very versatile.
When you like talk about the injunctions of the Middle Eastern traditions or the Manu Samhita, for example, I was telling. So if anyone reads that, it sounds like some crazy stuff. That's the ghetto.
But I've even heard you apply that to like just Christianity. I think you did like yesterday.
Yeah, that's a new application because I've been reading some books. I've been reading a book about Govardhan specifically, and the book is contrasting the Middle Eastern traditions dealing with idolatry and our worship of like rocks, for example. And it was just a lot of different history that I wasn't specifically aware of about Christianity, specifically in Islam. I was just like, ooh, this is the hood. This is like, sounds like the crazy stuff I experienced in the south side and west side of Chicago. You know, if you don't think like me, we're going to kill you, sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, that's hood.
Okay.
That's blood and Crip stuff. All right, so we're gonna stop here with that funny last little Q&A. Hare Krishna. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Haribo. Thank you.
Jai.